Good afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is the new Double Shot show that comes your way at 4 p.m. Eastern every weekday. And unlike the Steelers, we're going to get off to a non-slow start. Yes, that was Mike Tomlin's first choice of subject matter in his press conference today, the Steelers' slow starts. And it's a fair and accurate thing to bring up. You go back to Atlanta. Bijan Robinson was running a little bit too loosely. You go to Denver. Even in Denver, not everything was really in sync, certainly not with the offense. The home game against the Chargers, which they ended up winning fairly comfortably, not a great start there. And then you get to Indianapolis, and they get down 17 points, and it really, really shows itself. So, yes, there's things to work on, there's things to improve on, and this is how Tomlin put it.
We're just going to keep practicing, man. I imagine we're not the only ones who have issues with that, particularly if 3 out of your first 4 games have been in hostile environments. And so we're not going to change our approach. Sometimes I acknowledge an issue, but acknowledgement of an issue doesn't mean that we need to be a moving target in terms of how we address it. Sometimes it's just more of the same and maybe more urgency associated with the same in terms of our work.
And I'll say it again, he's well within his rights to talk about this. He's well within his rights, obviously, to address it. But there's slow starts, and then there's slow adjustments. Coaches are always happy to talk about slow starts. They're not as happy to talk about slow adjustments because slow adjustments are on the coaches. And the adjustments that were made in Indianapolis, well, some never got made, but a couple got made way too late. One that never was made, and I really don't understand this. TJ Watt's out there for 29 pass rushes. 29 times he went after the Indianapolis quarterback. Out of those 29, 14 times the Colts chipped him. That means they had a tight end, most often, come at TJ, just, get some hands on him, get in his way a little bit, bump him on the way to the route. It gives your right tackle a little bit of help. And TJ didn't do great with it. TJ only got to the quarterback in terms of hurries twice out of 29 attempts. So the Colts did what they had bragged about all of last week, and they took TJ out of the game. But why? You can move TJ. Tomlin and Terrell Austin have moved TJ to different spots on the line whenever stuff like this has happened in the past, and they didn't in Indianapolis. I kept waiting in terms of watching the game live from the press box at Lucas Oil Stadium and then watching it again on film. I'm thinking, move him, or have him occasionally, just to throw things off, switch sides with Nick Herbig. Do something that's different. Never happened. You know what else never happened? They never blitzed Joe Flacco. Now, in this case, and this really surprised me, but Tomlin acknowledged in Indianapolis that they were slow to adjust. Now, I don't know if he meant the coaches or the players or whatever, but when you change quarterbacks from Anthony Richardson to Flacco, you're talking about, polar opposites in terms of who they are and how they play. So you spend the whole week preparing for Richardson. Now Flacco comes in. Flacco can't move at all. What do you do with him? You could have been watching football for a month in your life and know that you've got to go after him. They never did. They never ramped up any blitzes. They never sent stunts in. They never sped Flacco up. If your counter to that is, well, Flacco gets rid of the ball too fast. Okay, fine. Let him get rid of the ball too fast, because he's not going to beat you downfield the way he did. This one blew me away. I couldn't get over this, especially when you saw that the Colts were able to throw underneath. They were able to let guys run their full routes and throw underneath and expose what was really lousy coverage on the Steelers' part. Blitz him. Why didn't it happen? I got one more for you, but it's on the other side of the ball. This one was really obvious. When you're running back, your lead running back is going nowhere, as in 13 carries for 19 yards, as in 6 first down carries for 8 total yards. What are you doing? Why are you handing the other team a down? The Colts didn't quite stack the line of scrimmage because they didn't need to, because Najee Harris ran so poorly, so unimaginatively, and really not very hard. But man, I mean, throw over them. I must have muttered that to myself a million times up there. Throw over them. They're up there. They're eyeing your running back, and you're just saying, you know what? We're the Steelers. We're going to run right into you on first down, and we'll show you. No, you didn't. But when Justin Fields started throwing downfield a little bit more in the second half, and later on, especially in that half, what do you know? They put up 21 points. That's not on the players. That's not on the preparation. That's on the head coach. At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects. Joined now by Chris Halleck, covering the Steelers and Mike Tomlin's press conference today over on the South Side. And Chris, if my ears weren't playing tricks on me, I would swear that Tomlin, for the first time in forever, said something good about the guy who isn't his designated QB1. And I say this on the occasion not only of Justin Fields having a fine start, the team being 3-1, but also the day after Mason Rudolph makes it into the starting lineup for the Titans and wins the Titans their first game. My goodness, how could this have happened?
It's very interesting to see how it played out, but I mean, Tomlin gave Justin specific credit when it came to the offense and the way that they fought. Obviously, it wasn't a great start for the entire team. Tomlin was very specific about how the defense got off to a very slow start, and 17-0 is a really good example of that. But, you know, down multiple scores in the fourth quarter, he said, I like the way the offense, the way, of course, Tomlin said it didn't blink. But then he said specifically, especially Justin, and then went on to give him more and more compliments about that. And it just goes to show, and he was even asked later, like, what can Justin do in order to kind of solidify himself there? And he just says, play good. And so I think it's just more of the same with the way Justin's playing right now.
You know, it's worth noting that all of that you just described was unsolicited. These weren't questions that were specifically about Fields. He brought Fields up on his own. I have never in any sport covered a coach who is more focused, who spends more time discussing stadium factors than this one. In fact, he does it as often as everyone else I've covered combined. Even when it came to the slow starts that you just mentioned, he said, we acknowledge that 3 out of the 4 games have been in hostile environments. It never stops. He values it so much. Today, when he was talking about the offensive lineman, the young offensive lineman, what did he bring up? Same thing. Stadium factors. They didn't blink. They didn't look like they were overwhelmed by it. I have never really gotten this, but then I'm not in a position to argue with the man. In the NFL, you only play 17 total games, so you only play 8 or 9 of them away from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I guess, you know, in covering hockey or baseball, you know, they do it all the time. It's just not that big a deal.
Yeah, and I do think that football is a little bit different when it comes to environmental factors. For just communication, not saying that other sports don't communicate.
Yeah. They're not using PitchCom to talk to the catcher.
Right. And then in hockey, the sport is just so fluid that, I mean, yes, you have to be able to communicate, but that's also something that both teams have to deal with whenever you're skating all over the ice. Football, like in terms of cadence, in terms of rhythm, in terms of the snap, so many teams.
But you're right. But he's talking about blinking. He's talking about whether or not they can handle the pressure. And when you're talking about Fields specifically, And that's where what I like about what he said the most was he's saying if Fields is really getting the job done, and he's just saying, I don't care what the scoreboard says. It was 17-0. We're in a road stadium. I'm going to find a way to bring this team back, whether that's with my legs or my arm or both. And that's my point here, is that that's the highest possible praise you can get from Tomlin. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with it. Yeah, absolutely. Because you can talk about a lot of the different things. Like, for example, I asked about 2 different positions today that, in my opinion, are, I wouldn't say one of them's a need, but one of them's a need, and that's wide receiver 2. They need a second receiver behind George Pickens. Van Jefferson isn't cutting it. Calvin Austin, some nice bursts, but anyway, I asked.
Cal had a good game. Give Cal
I'm
a
not.
break.
No, trust me, he had a good game.
Cal would be a wonderful 3. A wonderful
exactly
3.
my point. He is a good 3. They don't have a 2 right now. And so anyway, I ask about those positions. I ask about inside linebacker, which they didn't play well as a collective against the Colts. And
in coverage.
Correct. And so the way that Tomlin answers those, it's just, he kind of brushes that off. Oh, it's not a concern to me, or they're playing solid or something like that. When he doesn't have to give the credit the way he's giving it. And for him to give the credit to Justin the way he gave it, like you said, unsolicitedly, intangibles absolutely matter to this man. And whenever he can look a quarterback in the eye or a player in the eye and see that they're not fazed by anything that's going on around them, doesn't look like the situation's too big for them, that's going to be a thing that he's going to pipe up.
That's the kind of stuff that you observe. Some of it's intangible, some of it's tangible. When Justin scored his second rushing touchdown, he took a hit there at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. And little Calvin goes and finds this guy. Okay. And starts mouthing off at him. I asked Cal afterward, what was that all about? He said, well, he really gave Fields a shot, right? And I thought Justin was down. So I went to go give him something, whatever. And the next thing I know, I look to my left, and Justin's in a full sprint. Remember that? It wasn't a jog. It wasn't a trot. He was in a full sprint to the Steelers sideline to celebrate with them and to get everybody hyped up for the next drive. That's a leader, Chris.
Yeah.
That's a leader. And when you have the head coach who never says anything good about whoever QB2 happens to be on the depth chart saying that unsolicited, it's kind of a headline.
It really, really is. And also the fact that, he admitted, or I won't say admitted, but gave us today that Russell Wilson is getting closer, that his workload should be going up.
What was the term? He's going to consider. That's when we'll consider what that status is. That said, I should point out here that the depth chart still shows Russell Wilson as the number 1 quarterback. When we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for the J1Q segment. That's just one question, and today's comes from Tim in Trenton, New Jersey.
Hey, DK. Hope all is well. Long-time listener, first-time submitting to J1Q. Here's my question for you, DK. Are the Steelers utilizing Najee Harris the wrong way? I say that because Naji isn't as explosive as our 2 other running backs. Either Naji can't find a hole to run through, or Naji runs into the back of his teammates. Naji on the open field is unstoppable to me. So why aren't the Steelers utilizing him like a Deebo Samuels type way? DK, appreciate you listening. Love the show. Love Double Shot. Go Steelers.
I appreciate all of that, Tim. I appreciate more than anything the de facto scouting report that you did there on Najee's showing in Indianapolis, because that's exactly what it was. You can't confuse what was that happened whenever you see Cordero Patterson out there getting big yards every time he touches the ball and flying through holes and hitting them with authority. You can't confuse what happened out there whenever the Colts themselves a week earlier gave up 174 yards on the ground. They got gashed. They got outright gashed. And yet Naji couldn't find an inch? That doesn't add up. The part that might add up, and this is the part of your question here that I found most interesting, was the Deebo Samuel thing. When you get him into the open field, when you do what Justin Fields did late and throw that pass to him out in the flat, the right flat, and he takes off and he gets that head of steam and you've got those 230 solid pounds coming your way, you want nothing to do with it. And whoever that poor dude was from the Colts who ended up taking the full brunt of it knows exactly what I'm talking about. 32 yards. That's a 32-yard play. Why doesn't it happen more often? Tim, I'm going to guess that it isn't happening more often because most such passes, or I should say attempts, between Fields and Naji have gone to the left side, and for whatever reason, they haven't connected. I'm not ready to pin that on either Naji or on Fields, but if you remember those attempts, you'll see that Naji will either turn the wrong way or have to adjust back for a throw that's behind him. Whereas what you want on those passes, you'll remember Ben Roethlisberger was brilliant at this. You put that ball in front of the running back. They catch it like this, and they don't lose their speed. In fact, they build up their speed. For whatever reason, when Fields throw to the right side, Naji's there, he catches it, and he takes off. Now, incredibly small sample size, obviously, but look, they've got to do something. They've got to find a way, just like we're talking about with adjustments on this show today, they've got to find a way to get him the football in situations where he's not just running into the rear end of one of his offensive linemen. Again, I appreciate that, Tim. I appreciate everybody who watches Double Shot, and we're going to be back with another one of these tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern.